What is an spot approval?
So spot approval, well, I'll back up a little bit. So for those FHA buyers, the first-time home buyers who want to come in with 3.5% down, very generous program. If you're purchasing a condominium, the association has to be approved by HUD. So they need to know that it has to meet certain guidelines. So they go in periodically and update approvals, but at a certain point, if no one is buying, there's not much activity in the complex, then the approval will expire. And if no one takes the initiative to renew it, and you're out looking for the property, it doesn't qualify for FHA. But they give us the opportunity to do a single unit approval. So if you're buying a unit, we can go in there and have that particular unit approved. And I do a little bit more also. If all we need is an extra document to have the whole complex approved, then we're doing something not only for this particular family, but for anybody else who wants to buy in the area. So we're doing something for the community.
Exactly. You're doing a favor to the entire complex pretty much, right? Okay.
Yes.
Now let's give details. So if you're a buyer that's been looking for a condo or a townhome or a property with an HOA, correct?
Yes.
With an HOA, sometimes there's even private communities with homes with that HOA. But let's stick to condos, townhome. You've been renting and you went and got approved with Laura, and they say, "Okay, guys, congratulations, you've been approved, but you qualify only for a condo or a townhome. Not a problem. Better than renting. Let's go. Let's buy the homes." But what are the challenges that most buyers face when they start looking for a condo, that especially if they are FHA, that, as Laura said, the HOA is not FHA approved, and therefore if there's 10 properties on the market that you might be targeting, probably you're going to have, out of those 10, only 2 that qualify for FHA, and the inventory shrinks.
You're watching The Nuggets with Alex Lopez.
Hey everybody, this is Alex Lopez and welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Club podcast. Today I have the great pleasure to interview Laura Gonzalez with Powerhouse Mortgage, and we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, which is the spot approvals for condos that are not FHA approved. I was just saying, behind the scenes, Laura, once again, thank you for doing this. Thank you for giving us your time to share the nuggets with our clients, with our consumers, and even with real estate agents. Because as I was saying to you, I've been doing real estate for over 18 years, and this is the first time that I'm doing a spot approval transaction, which I'm kind of shocked on myself. Like, I miss so many opportunities by not having the right lender to help us, to assist us, and basically we've been missing out. So once again, welcome to the club, Laura, and I want to let you introduce yourself, and let's start with this episode of spot approvals. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alex. Welcome, everyone. Pleasure to meet everyone. Laura Gonzalez. I've been a lender for 20 years, so I have a wealth of experience with first-time home buyers, move-up buyers, specialty products. I was truly surprised that Alex didn't. This is the first transaction with a spot approval, so
Shocking.
I'm pleased. I'm pleased that we could share this with everyone and that we could do this. And this is a real-life example of what a difference it makes to have someone on your side. It's a difference between putting a family in a home or not.
Exactly. And thank you for your introduction, Laura. And I just want to add that, as I was telling you, it's really important to know this, to have this information, because, yes, there might be families that didn't buy a house because they didn't know this. They didn't have the lender that can actually get a spot approval. And they were kind of like, I'm an FHA first-time buyer that have been approved for a condo or a townhomes or whatever has HOA, but the HOA wasn't FHA approved. So my realtor told me that the houses that that I like are only conventional, or in the ones that I don't like, I don't want to move forward with those. But anyway, let's go straight to the point. What is an spot approval?
So a spot approval, well, I'll back up a little bit. So for those FHA buyers, the first-time home buyers who want to come in with 3.5% down, very generous program. If you're purchasing a condominium, the association has to be approved by HUD. So they need to know that it has to meet certain guidelines. So they go in periodically and update approvals, but at a certain point, if no one is buying, there's not much activity in the complex, then the approval will expire. And if no one takes the initiative to renew it, and you're out looking for the property, it doesn't qualify for FHA. But they give us the opportunity to do a single unit approval. So if you're buying a unit, we can go in there and have that particular unit approved. And I do a little bit more also. If all we need is an extra document to have the whole complex approved, then we're doing something not only for this particular family, but for anybody else who wants to buy in the area. So we're doing something for the community.
Exactly. You're doing a favor to the entire complex pretty much, right? Okay.
Yes.
Now let's give details. So if you're a buyer that's been looking for a condo or a townhome or a property with an HOA, correct?
Yes.
With an HOA, sometimes there's even private communities with homes with that HOA. But let's stick to condos, townhome. You've been renting and you went and got approved with Laura, and they say, "Okay, guys, congratulations, you've been approved, but you qualify only for a condo or a townhome. Not a problem. Better than renting. Let's go. Let's buy the homes." But what are the challenges that most buyers face when they start looking for a condo, that especially if they are FHA, that, as Laura said, the HOA is not FHA approved, and therefore if there's 10 properties on the market that you might be targeting, probably you're going to have, out of those 10, only 2 that qualify for FHA, and the inventory shrinks. So, and there is this spot approval approach. Now, let's talk about, is this a spot approval? What are the requirements? Because I think the seller needs to be on board in order to do this, or not?
They do, because the association has to cooperate and provide us certain documents in order for us to have the approval. And since the property isn't our buyers yet, we need the seller's permission for the HOA to release those documents to us. And most people are on board, just like the transaction that we have. They're willing to cooperate because they want to sell to a family. So the association does have to cooperate. We have a list and a questionnaire that we put together, send it over to them, and they fill it out. They provide us the documents. We send that over to our condo team who gives it a going over to make sure that we haven't missed anything. And then it goes over to HUD for the FHA approval. So, but yes, we do need the association's cooperation and the seller.
Okay, I think I'm glad that you mentioned that. I think everybody needs to be on board, because I want to believe that even the HOAs are not familiar with the spot approvals, and they are like, might not open to play ball, right?
Yes.
Now, let's talk about the seller side, because unfortunately, what happens that we have a buyer representing, I'm sorry, an agent representing the buyer and an agent representing the seller. And sometimes happens that the agent representing the seller is not even aware that there's a chance of getting an spot approval for his or her listing, correct?
Yes. And some agents they just go back to how FHA was in the past. So they think, oh no, I don't want an FHA approval. I don't want anything to do with it because it's going to be stricter. There's going to be more requirements, which really isn't the case. So they just kind of shut down, and they don't keep up with, like you, they're not educated. They don't keep up with trends. They don't try to learn something new. So they're unaware of it, and they discourage their seller from taking the offer.
And that's the reason Why I'm doing this? Because it's lack of information, myself included, guys. Because when I was, when I have sold condos, I always explain this to my clients. Okay, congrats. Yes, we have, your approval, your FHA. But I do explain this situation of, okay, guys, our biggest challenge is going to be that out of 10 properties, probably two are going to be FHA approved. And that has been my drill forever until now. That we're doing our first transaction with Laura and we got this spot approved. But this goes out to the listing agents. As Laura says, get educated, team up with lenders that are up to date with the lending guidelines, in this case these HOA situations, because you might be preventing getting a great buyer for your listing, for your seller, just because you think that you're not familiar with the spot approval, or you're rejecting an FHA offer and you're just trying to get a conventional buyer that might be offering less, but you're like telling your seller, oh, that's all you get, because this only qualifies for conventional. Now let's talk about cost. When you do a real estate transaction, you open escrow, and the HOA documents need to be ordered, usually paid by the seller. What is the cost for a seller in order to, if say, okay, I understand what the spot approval is now that you explained, Mr. or Mrs. Agent, what's going to be my cost? Is there an additional cost to do this?
There is, and that cost can vary depending on what the association is charging. There are some associations that will charge a couple of $100s to provide the documents because they're service oriented. They want to provide that for their sellers and for the residents. There are some that use companies to provide the documents, and those charge a little bit more. So we're talking about anywhere from $400, maybe up to $2,000, depending on the case. In our case, the association started off pretty high, but the listing agent stepped in and said, hey, is this normal? Can you break it down for us? And once they understood, because it helps to have the listing agent on board, they understood what we were doing and the purpose, and that most of these documents were going to be used by escrow as well. Then, they brought down the fees to something that was reasonable and agreeable to everyone.
Okay, just to clarify, because if agents are watching this video, even experienced buyers, are the documents that you're referring to are the same HOA documents that are requested when the real estate transaction opens, or these are a separate set of docs to get the spot approval?
I would say 80% of the documents are ones that will be requested by escrow.
Awesome.
The additional ones, we can go over the additional ones when.
Great. Okay. The reason I'm asking this question is because, again, the goal of doing this is kind of like giving the nuggets to everybody involved in the purchase or sale of an condo or townhome that is not FHA approved. So just want to make sure everybody understands that pretty much if the seller is on board and is accepting an offer, regardless, you might be, you have to pay the HOA documents, correct?
Yes, because it's a seller's responsibility, whether it's conventional, VA, or FHA, they're going to pass along the association documents to the new buyer. So that would be a copy of the budget, the CC&Rs, the rules and regulations, similar documents. They have to pass those along to the new buyer. And those are ones that we're going to request along with insurance and then a brief questionnaire that the association completes for us.
Okay.
So they mirror each other.
Just to be on the same page, what are the requirements? Like, what are the bullet points in order to start a spot approval?
So we have them fill out a questionnaire, and the questionnaire basically asks how many units are in the complex. The biggest thing we're looking for is how many of those units are owner occupied and how many are occupied by tenants. So FHA does require that at least 51% of the units be owner occupied, because what they're doing is the whole purpose of the FHA is to encourage home ownership. So they want to build up and they want to make sure that you're living in an area that's going to be safe. And when you have more owners occupying a property, it's a better atmosphere for a new buyer.
Okay.
So they're looking for that. They're looking to see if there's any litigation against the association. How are they handling their budget? What's the percentage of tenants that are behind on their HOA dues? So, and all of these questions are to establish how strong is the association, how strong are their reserves, because they want this family to come into a property that's being managed well.
Now, aren't these the same challenges for a conventional purchase? Like, let's see, forget about FHA. I had a conventional buyer, 3%, 5% down. Don't have to worry about the HOA being FHA approved. Everything that the challenges that you just mentioned, aren't those the same challenges that this lender doing conventional are going to face?
Excellent point. Yes. So if you have a first-time home buyer that wants to come in with 3% down conventional or 5%, and one of those items that I listed is off, let's say they have the percentage of renters is too high, we could still proceed with a conventional loan, but they're going to request 10 to 15% down. So there goes your minimum down payment for a first-time home buyer, and the interest rate may be higher. So there's a workaround, but it affects your buyer. So yes, it's the same challenge on conventional as it is with FHA.
So as one of the requirements, like you said, it has to be 51% owner-occupied properties. Now,
Yes.
what if there's the other percentage is not owner-occupied or tenant, it's vacant? What's the deal?
So if it's vacant, then what we could show, and I've had a situation like this before, it was in escrow and it was being purchased by someone who's going to live in the property. So that's what pushed us over to be able to
Okay.
qualify.
So as long, like you said, FHA promotes homeownership. And basically, as long as the purchase for this unit is going to be owner occupied, it's like you can work around.
Yes. So you're going to count the unit that your buyer is in escrow with. That's going to count towards the percentage because it's going to be owner occupied. So
Okay.
if there are other units that are vacant, but not for sale, if they're up for rent, then we know that those are going to be renter occupied. But we do take into account ones that are listed. If we have a contract saying that someone's going to buy it and occupy, and then ours will of course be owner occupied. So we count those towards the percentage to help us out.
Okay. Now okay, the spot approvals, obviously it's only for FHA, right? Because
Yes.
it's just the FHA needs to be approved. What are the challenges that you have faced with the HOAs? Because I was mentioning on the realtor side that sometimes we have a listing agent that has no clue that this can be done, and obviously they informed mislead their client, the seller, not rejecting FHA offers or telling them, even in the MLS remarks, conventional offers only, not FHA. The HOA is not FHA approved. But now we know that that shouldn't be the case. You're a listing agent, put a condo, talk to Laura, and you should put a spot approvals available. I mean, doable, whatever. Anyways, what are your challenges? What have been the challenges with the HOAs when you're doing this type of approvals?
It's going to depend on the experience of whoever's running the HOA. You might have sometimes you have a board that's really big, and they say, and maybe they only meet once a month or every other month, and the association is unable to make any movement without their permission. So and so you don't want to wait 2-3 months to get the documents that you need, because you want somebody that's available to work on that now. And fortunately for us, our association it's a small board, and they've been on the spot, providing us whatever we need ASAP. So that's the challenge: is how many times? What's the I'm trying to think of the word? How experienced is the association? How bogged down are they on other items? How important are they? What's the importance that they're placing on our request? Do they have to go through layers of bureaucracy to give us what we need? And if If they're mired in some sort of litigation, they might just not want to help you. So it's going to, every association is different, but so it helps to reach out to the association and introduce yourself and to collaborate with them, to make it as easy as possible for them, offer to explain what the process is so that they feel that you're there to help them and they're helping you as well.
You use a keyword, collaboration, because that's what it is. On a real estate transaction, that's the foundation of the escrow, the collaboration from all parties, that we all need to be on the same page toward the same goal, which is closing. I made a post, I don't know, a week ago regarding a most recent closing. And when we close a transaction, we all win. The HOA now had a spot approved. The buyers buying the property really wanted. The seller was able to sell the property for the most amount of money because they accepted our offer because it was the highest offer. And it was this FHA buyer. So, but it's important that we're all on the same page. And most importantly, that buyers and sellers are being represented by professionals that they know their craft. Now, is there any extra cost to get this spot approval on the buyer side?
No, if the seller were not agreeable to pay for the documents, then the cost would fall on the buyer if they wanted to move forward. So we would obtain a quote for them. Otherwise, there's no extra cost for the buyer. We incur all of that cost. We handle the processing. We send it off to HUD. So no extra cost to them.
Okay, just a tip for the buyers. So the agent should put everything in writing that is being covered by the seller. No different from a regular contract when we ask who pays the HOA documents, who pays the HOA fees, transfer, whatever. So agents, make sure you fill out the contract correctly, so you get the assurance that you're going to get those documents from the get-go. You don't want to get into escrow and say, hey, you didn't check you didn't put the mark there, you didn't check on the contract, so it lands on the buyer if the seller doesn't want to pay. Do all HOAs accept spot approvals?
No, because they may not be open to it. Or they may know ahead of time that the percentage of rentals is too high. So that's why I make the initial phone call and introduce myself and kind of ask them a couple questions that I know that would kill the transaction.
Okay.
So that would be the case. And some of them are very forthright and they'll share that information with you.
Okay, now let's talk about killing a transaction. What kills a transaction that you call and say, what's going to kill it? Like the ownership is less than 51%?
Ownership is less than 51%. If they're currently in some sort of litigation that is health and safety related, let's say that there's something that came across on the property. So, that's we'd have to wait for that to be resolved. So that's important. Health and safety, if their budget isn't in line, if they don't have enough reserves, in case something happens to the property, let's say that there's a pipe that bursts in the common area. If the association doesn't have enough funds to take care of that, that's going to affect every single resident.
Now, okay, you give 3 scenarios. So it's occupancy. You said, okay, health and safety. And what was the third one?
Litigation.
Litigation. Okay. So, and that's going to apply to every condo purchase if you're doing a purchase for a condo. So now, what are the tips? You just reminded me this transaction that we had with this buyer when the listing agent failed to have all that information upfront listing the property, that we got into escrow. Buyer was so excited buying the property, and what was disclosed on the MLS, there was no issues with the HOA. Everything was fine. But when we started digging, there was a gang-related situation on the common areas. What was the other issue?
There was a child that was abducted from the laundry area.
Yeah. So there was several issues that I think the listing agent is responsible of asking the right questions to the seller, not only to the seller, to ask the right questions to even to the HOA, because sometimes the sellers, they don't disclose everything. So I think to save buyers time and money and everybody's, to save everybody's time, I think the listing agent should contact the HOA directly while he's listing the property, because otherwise, on this transaction, our client did the home inspection, our client did even the appraisal, and then this HOA thing came out, and they were like, why you they didn't disclose up front? Why? Because the listing agent didn't disclose that. And the listing agent said the seller didn't disclose, and on and on. So that's a good tip for agents that dealing with HOAs. Get the stuff up front so you don't waste anybody's time and money.
I see that sometimes, Alex, that they'll say it's up to the buyer to make the discovery. But I think that's kind of backwards. Why would you even go into escrow, go into it 2-3 weeks, and then have to start over again? You're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
And this is when I, I'm not the real estate police here, guys, but we have the same license, but our practice are so different from agent to agent. I think that's called due diligence. And if we're representing a seller, get the listing agreement signed, contact the HOA. Is there any issues with the HOA? What would be the questions that they should ask? I think that would be a good tip for the agents.
Firstly, I would ask if there's any type of litigation that pending litigation they should know about, and what type of litigation. They want to ask about the solvency of the association, as far as, what are their amount of their reserves? Do they have sufficient insurance coverage? Any association should be able to hand over the insurance, and your lender can take a look to verify if there's sufficient insurance. And then also about the occupancy ratio, because that makes a difference for FHA and conventional. So those are good things to know up front.
Okay, so let's just put it one by one again, just kind of like summarize it. So number one,
Litigation.
litigation.
Any pending litigation. If it's something small, you have somebody that is suing another neighbor for something that's not health and safety, that's okay. But anything that's structural or health and safety, then yes, you definitely want to know.
Okay.
You want to
Number
know
two,
if their budget is solvent, if they have sufficient insurance coverage for the common areas.
okay, so budget,
And then the thirdly is the occupancy ratios.
occupancy ratios. And I think only after that you can determine if this this complex is FHA approved, or this is just cash offers only. Why? No financing. Why there's no financing? Because it didn't meet those 3 requirements needed in order to get financing, either FHA or conventional. Look, super great information, Laura. I'm excited of doing this episode about this, because it's crucial information. Like, to me, it's like I feel ashamed of not knowing this, and I'm very, very transparent here. That I wish I knew. Luckily, most of the buyers, I would say 99% of the buyers that represented a condo, I was able to find them an FHA approved complex, but it was more work for me. Like dig the inventory. It took more time to find a unit that was FHA approved, because we didn't know about the spot approvals, and now we know.
If I could add something, that not every property that has an HOA needs to be FHA approved in order to have an FHA buyer. You mentioned townhouses. So if you see a property and you pull up the property profile and it says that it's a townhouse, not a condo, because sometimes they'll list them as a townhouse, but they really are legally a condo. But if it says townhouse or a PUD in a planned unit
home.
development, then those do not require a separate FHA approval.
Okay, great point. So, okay, so we have condo that kind of look like an apartment, on the top of each other. We have the townhome is most of the cases are separate little units next to each other. And we have the pod home planned unit development, right?
Yes.
planned unit development. So you say that townhomes and pods, planned unit development, don't need a separate FHA approval?
Correct. You can go in as an FHA buyer, 3.5% down, and you do not have to be on that FHA approved list.
Really? That's another tip. So so it's not that if it has HOA, it needs to be FHA approved. On pod homes and townhomes, that rule doesn't apply.
That does not apply, correct?
Man, I feel ashamed again. I didn't know that. Okay, good
We'll keep
tip.
them coming.
Exactly. So realtors, get this information, and this video goes out to anybody that need this information, because knowing this, it's going to make a huge difference on your business, on your life, if you're the buyer or the seller. So I'm glad we're having this conversation again. Challenges overall. What are the benefits? I was mentioning just recent. What were the benefits of doing the spot approval, and how long does it take? Because sometimes the agents or the sellers are, and how long that's gonna take? Is it gonna take like 3 months, 90 days, 6 months? How long does it take? Normally takes.
It's going to depend on how quickly we get documents from the association. So from the time that we receive them, we submit them to our condo department. It takes them 24 hours to review. They send it to HUD. And right now, for this particular project, they return the information within 48 hours. So we submitted it once, and it came back to say that a certain portion of the insurance was a little bit low, and they asked us to bump that up. So they asked us to bump it up, and they were confident enough with the other documents that they said, go ahead and order the appraisal. So in reality, it would add maybe 7 to 10 extra days to your transaction,
Look,
depending on if everyone cooperates. Again, cooperation.
even if you round it up to 15 days, it's nothing, because a successful escrow can go from 21 days to 30 days, but the average is 45 days. And if we go work with Laura, that our average is kind of like 21 to 30 max, 15 days is nothing in order to have this buyer that really wanted this property. Like our clients, right? We showed them, I don't know, 4 or 5 units, and she wanted this unit, and it happened to be the one that's not FHA approved. We're like, what are we going to do now? So, and going back to history a little bit, when was the first time you did a spot approval?
First time I did a spot approval had to be, trying to think back, at least 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
10
I had
years.
somebody that I was working with that they had never done a spot approval before. And so she said, oh, I want you to go into the city of Downey and approve every single complex. And I said, I can't do that. You have to be in contract to do that. But, I applauded the effort.
But you know what? I'm glad you mentioned this. You have to be in contract in order to get a spot approval. It doesn't happen by like, oh, let's get this approved. That's the HOA's job, right? To get the entire complex approved, right? Now,
Right. Well, as a lender or you as Alex as a realtor, there's no great benefit to you unless you're in a transaction, right? Because we're that's what we're doing. Is there'd be really no reason to try to get the complex approved unless you are maybe the preferred realtor in that area. Then yes, it's to your benefit. And we could speak to the association to see if they would be agreeable to do a whole complex approval, because that could be a selling point on any realtor's website to say, I am the preferred realtor in this area, and I have this project approved. It's going to open everything up.
right, use me as the preferred realtor of the complex.
Absolutely.
As I saved the day. Actually, that's a great idea. All right, realtors, don't steal that idea. I'm gonna. Okay, now let's see if we're forgetting something here. Like I said, my idea of doing this episode and putting this content out there is to give the nuggets. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. It's easy to, digest. So either the buyer, the seller, the realtors can go and apply it. And definitely you want a professional behind you. So call Laura. We're going to put her information here. Let me see.
You had asked what's the benefit of a spot approval, and the biggest benefit to me is that we're placing someone into a home that would never have been able to buy. They can't afford a single family. Everybody else told them it couldn't be done because it's FHA, and we got them into a home. So that's the biggest benefit. We're building that generational wealth.
Exactly. We're building that, promoting home ownership. And like I said, I'm going back to what I said at the beginning. Everybody wins when we close the transaction because everybody's achieving something. And buyer, seller, and all the almost 27 people involved in the real estate transaction, because that's what it is. It's not only the lender, the escrow, the realtor, there's more people involved. And especially when the HOA is involved. Okay, wrapping this up. What happens with fixer-uppers? It has nothing to do with the spot approval, right? That's more about the property, or there are certain guidelines for the unit to be approved. I think that would be more on the appraisal side, right? Like the regular financing, conventional or FHA, right?
Correct, right? Because the paperwork doesn't show the condition of the property. What's going to show is going to be the appraisal itself. And as far as fixer-uppers, there's different degrees. There's something it could be just merely cosmetic, but if it's something that's health and safety, then that would not meet FHA requirements. But the spot approval itself isn't dependent on that. So we can get it approved and then get the appraisal back, and if the house is in shambles, then that won't work.
That's a different issue that has to do with the lender, more with the meeting the lending guidelines and the property conditions. Okay, I think we have covered everything. Anything that you would like to add regarding the spot approvals, Laura?
Just that it can be done. It's a great example, and most people don't know about it. So don't be quick to say no to your buyer, or you as a buyer don't give up. Just reach out, and we'll see what we can do to help you. But it can be done. Yes,
and there you have it, guys. This is basically what Laura just said. Like, don't give up. Definitely ask the right questions, hire the right professionals, because if you're hiring a realtor, make sure you hire the right professional, because they need to give you the right information. And with the buyer, same thing. You need to have an agent that is representing you that knows this stuff. And also the lender. So it's a chain of professionals, chain of services that can make a huge difference. And if you guys like this content, this episode, make a comment, follow us, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, share with your friends and family or professionals, because this information that Laura just shared with us is going to make a difference. So, Laura, I appreciate your help. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you once again for sharing the information with you guys. I'll see you next week.